You're listening to REIA Radio, the nationally trusted name in real estate investing. We dig deep to discover investors' why in real estate. If you want to skip all the BS and get in investors' heads, you're in the right spot. Be one of the thousands to check out REIARadio.com.
There's a hole in the bottom of it, and all this disgusting trash water goes all over my. And they're perforated, like the tops of them. See them, Ted? It goes right in. No, they're not Crocs. See, Justin, they're actually pretty nice.
I don't have that bone in my body to like kind of be the not nice guy and like not try to help every person out or listen to every sob story you hear and just don't care about it.
I mean, you are wearing a kitty cat t-shirt.
Hey, Meow Wars. 4-year-old picked it out.
I mean, right there, there's not a mean bone in your body if you're wearing that shirt.
When you're talking about Airbnbs in general, there's always someone that's going to pay your price, right? So, it's an experience factor. I would have never thought that this house that I bought for under $300,000 would at times rent for $1,000 a month. Or, sorry, $1,000 a night.
Austin's like, this is about me, not Dan.
But the more you automate, the less human you are.
Austin Chambers, I told you this would be good. I really like his way, that he's doing all these different types of short terms, but he's unique because he's trying to find these different avenues with the pools, the hot tubs, and I think that you learned a little bit in today's podcast.
Yeah, I like his approach, and yeah, he definitely is zeroed in on the pools. I actually almost called him Pool Boy a couple of times. But he also is in 3 different markets. I mean, 2 of them are pretty close together. They're like an hour apart, Lincoln and Omaha, Nebraska. But the Ozarks is about, like he mentioned, from Lincoln, it's about a little over 5.5 hours. But he's got some properties there. And, he's got some great tips on finding, acquiring, and managing, and some tools and tips and tricks to use along the way with managing short-term rentals. He talks about kind of like expansion plans, what he plans to do with properties that he already has and how he's going to grow his business. He's talked about working with partners and family members as partners. And this is a good one for those of you interested in learning about how to work with your spouse in your business, on your business. And, he has a super busy life, 3 kids. He's a young guy. He's probably, 29, 30. And I don't know.
Well, as old as, I think he said was 16 or 17.
Oh, okay. So well, I whiffed on that one.
Yeah.
Well, it's still possible.
Still possible.
16 or 17, really?
I got a lot out of the systems, the tools, the self-booking, how to handle parties.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that stuff. So that was helpful for me to kind of like understand what's going on behind the scenes with Airbnb. Mm-hmm. So yeah, for those of you wanting to like kind of dial in your bookings and your Airbnb management, listen to this episode. There's some really good stuff in here. And I tell you what, we've had so much rain in the last like 2-3 weeks.
Has your house flooded?
Well, okay, so I live in a lake community, and we're on a canal. And for the last 3 years, I have been unable to put our boat in the water and use it. And I look, I get it, first world problems. It's like one of those things, but it kind of sucks, man. Like we have a dock and a nice setup in our backyard, and like literally spend no time back there.
Yeah.
And so we've gotten so much rain and
like 10 inches,
severe weather. I think May what were we?
I thought that one rainstorm last week was like 10 inches.
No.
Oh,
yeah, maybe that's what you tell your wife. But it was like 5.5, 6 last week, and then our lake level went from 24 inches. Okay, I'm measuring off the end of my 30-foot dock to over 4 feet in about 10 days. Insane. And now it's deep enough where we can put a boat in. So that we're working on that. Didn't get it done in time for Memorial Day, damn it. But like crazy weather. The last, like, I woke up at probably 2:30 a.m. and there were tornado warnings all over Omaha and like all around our county. And we somehow dodged a lot of it. There was like really big hail in places, but we didn't get any. I mean, we got lucky there.
I got hail, but not enough to cause any damage.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, my backyard was like a creek/river going through it, and that creek river went through my pool.
Oh God.
And I have like wheelbarrows worth of mud in my pool. Like it destroyed it, and like we just uncovered it.
So is this like brown water?
Oh, I'll have to show you a picture, man. It I'm talking like 2 inches of mud on the bottom.
Oh.
And then we have a retaining wall at the end of our pool. So then the water was like a waterfall going off the retaining wall, and it shifted the retaining wall and opened and gapped it up. So all the soil dropped around the concrete of our pool, like. And I called up my insurance agent. I'm like, hey, I go, is this covered? And he's like, that's only covered under flood insurance.
Yeah.
And then our sump pump went out. So like my father-in-law calls me and he's like, hey, can I borrow your wet dry vac? And I'm like, the storm's going on. I'm like, well, Jessica's right there next to me and we're laying in bed. I'm like, I better check our basement just to check. We never had water. And I go down there and the whole back storage area is full of water. Oh. And the sump pump quit working. And it was flowing out of the sump pump pit, and we don't have like a backup, and the pump just seized. And I don't think it's ever turned on in the 5-6 years I've had this house. And so here I am, 7 in the morning, 6:45 in the morning. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go down to Lowe's, get a sump pump, and I get to the bottom of my neighborhood, and no kidding, there's cars that are half underwater at the end of my street. They're all flooded and stalled out in the intersection.
It's funny. Like Omaha has a street. It's called Saddle Creek.
Yeah,
and
it's looked like the Saddle Creek.
Yeah, it's funny that it's actually called Saddle Creek Road, and it is notorious for just being basically a lake. And why did they make a street there? I don't understand it. Like every time it rains, even a little bit.
There's a huge culvert, or whatever they call it, that's underneath that Saddle Creek to divert the creek.
Okay.
That's flowing underneath it, but it's the lowest point in the city.
Yeah.
So everything flows to it. So I
from
have
both sides.
Yeah.
It's like a V.
And I live in Nelson Creek, which is also a creek area, and it's covered up. But yeah, it's the same concept. A ton of water. And I just got it all cleaned up yesterday, and then we get storm number 2 in, which didn't get the mud. Thank goodness we didn't get the river, but it's still like, here I am, 7 in the morning, cleaning all the stuff out of the pool, my official pool boy. That's why we're interviewing Austin today. I'm like, man, like what kind of maintenance are you dealing with? Because I hate. I despise like the idea of uncovering my pool and then having to clean it every day because my filters are just jam packed. There's so many trees around our pool.
You need a pool boy, man.
That's my wife would just point at me.
What about Carson?
Well, we trade
Put him on payroll, man.
We trade off every day. The kids have to transition on who pulls filters, but they get so disgusted because there's like a mouse or something inside the filters.
Oh.
A dead mouse, or we've had bats, and once one bunny goes in, you get the whole family of baby bunnies, and then they get sucked up into filters.
Jeez,
yeah,
bunny murderer.
It's always something, man. It's always something. So think about that. If you never had a pool and you want a pool, just be prepared for the animals. And if you live out in the country, I was talking to my pool guy, and he's like, "Yeah," he goes, every once in a while you get like a deer that will jump in.
Oh,
and then they get bloated and everything, and they got to use like heavy equipment to pull it out.
Yeah, well, it's like having a boat. It's like, they say the best day is the day you buy it. The second best day is the day you sell it.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like a pool, right? Like the maintenance of it and everything else.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
Unless you get one of those pools that have one of those electronic covers, like I would highly recommend if you ever get one for safety too.
Yeah.
But I checked my pool guy. And he's like, yeah, if you want to put that in, it's $20,000 plus you have to redo all the concrete.
Oh, whatever.
But it takes maintenance completely out of the picture.
Yeah, that would be nice. Actually, you just hit a button and it closes.
Well,
it's like having an electric boat lift that you just hit a button and the whole thing goes up. Because I used to have one of those crank things. It's like your rotator cuff is screaming by the time you're done with it. You're just cranking it around for like 20 minutes just to get it to go up like 8 inches or whatever. 10 inches for you.
Thanks.
Well, what do you think, man? Should we cover today's
Golden Nugget? And this Golden Nugget is brought to you by JM Real Estate Capital.
Hi, it's Rob, JM Real Estate Capital. We're the money guys that you need to know for all your real estate investments. Talk to us. We can do what your local bank can't or won't do. We don't have millions, we have trillions with a T to lend. 844 we close, or go online at jmrecapital.com. That's jmrecapital.com. JM Real Estate Capital, smart solutions for the real estate investor.
I was thinking about this. I had this situation last week that happened. I did not know this, and I feel pretty ignorant for not knowing it, but whenever I've gotten insurance on single-family homes, I've typically either gone with a couple agents. So I have a State Farm agent that I've had for like 25 years, and then I have my buddy Tony. Anytime I buy a multifamily property, he'll go out and get the best quote for me and place it.
So he's a broker.
Yeah, he's a broker.
Yep.
And so typically I'll have Tony just kind of shop around. And he'll get, and I know you use Marty McGuire a lot with Blackstone Insurance. Shout out Marty. But Tony Maurer, he's usually my guy, and he's got his kind of like carriers that he checks with. So anytime I need a quote on a building, he'll do it. So I was trying to get this quote. I had a property that the insurance carrier that I had, we had an open claim on it, and it hasn't been closed yet because long story short, it's still open, but we need to get a quote, and because the carrier is no longer going to insure those type of assets. So I called Tony, and he's like, yeah, I can't do anything with the carriers that I work with or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, hey, just like, I don't want to like cheat on you, you know what I mean? But I have to check with a couple other brokers because I got to get this done like fast. Mm-hmm. And so my point on this is the golden nugget is if you get an insurance policy quote from a broker, you are likely not going to be able to work with another broker with similar carriers. They block them out. Mm-hmm. So you have to, I didn't know this. I was like, how hard is it to get in a commercial property insurance quote? And guess what? It's a lot harder now. Mm-hmm. And some of them actually require, depending on the type of property that you have, they may require, like if you're getting a builder's risk policy, your builder might actually have to have like certification or like stuff done for what they call wet work, which is basically, it's not murdering people, which you find out in like The Godfather or whatever, but like it's like a wet works permit or license or whatever, where they actually, they're certified so that they have like stop loss on water damage. So there's shutoffs everywhere they should be. And there's basically, you have to go through this training and get certified for it or whatever. And it's extra work, right? And for you to place a policy with this, they may require that depending on the carrier. But I got two quotes. So I went to two different brokers. One of them was being done by our builder, and I don't know the guy. So I'm like, I knew they were working on it, and we're like, oh yeah, we're gonna get a quote any day now. And it'd been like a week or 10 days or something. I'm like, I got to get moving on this, man. So I checked with a local broker here, and I was like, hey, I need a policy. Here's what I'm looking for. It's builder's risk, this and that. And then they're like, oh yeah, we can get that done, no problem. And they're like, hey, we just found out when we tried to get this quote from, I don't remember what carrier it was. It was like Zurich or whatever. They're like, there's already another broker that's requesting this quote, and they won't release it to us unless you sign this form. And it's basically like, this person is my agent, and I authorize them to receive this quote. And I'm like, okay, yeah, whatever. That's fine. And so I signed this form, and then come to find out, my builder was doing all this extra work to get certified or whatever. Like he had to do like 10 hours of work just to get all these quotes. And I like totally sabotaged this because it was his insurance broker, and they were jumping through all these hoops. And the guy I checked with, he's like, oh yeah, I can get this quote, no problem. It's just sitting there. It's waiting for you to hit this release. And I'm like, okay, like what? This is dumb. I don't understand. So I did that. Anyway, I totally messed everything up, and I had to apologize to everybody involved because like I was authorizing somebody to get a quote when somebody had already put in a ton of work and I didn't realize it. So my point on all this is, if you're getting a commercial real estate insurance policy, make sure you work with one broker and you get an understanding of how many carriers and which carriers they have access to. And if you're going to shop it to another broker, make sure the carriers don't overlap, because you're going to piss people off and you're going to waste a bunch of time, especially if it's a time-sensitive situation.
I was talking to my insurance agent, and he was working on a big apartment deal. And the current owner was getting a quote from the current insurance company that was managing it, just to know where they'd be at. But they weren't his primary insurance guy, right? So they went to my guy, and he's like, hey, I went and priced it, but I couldn't price it on this carrier, which was the best carrier and the one I wanted, because it was already under the current insurance broker. And he said that they needed the other insurance broker to sign off on that to be able to make it happen. Not just the policyholder.
You have to sign a release or whatever. Like anyway, it sucked. It was really awkward, like super awkward. And I spent like way more time on it, and they did obviously too. I feel bad just for my own ignorance, but anybody listening to this, learn from my mistake on that, and just do your due diligence on the front end. Don't get in a rush. Work with a broker. Make sure they're the right one, and get a list if they're fine with telling you who it is. What's their list of carriers they're shopping? Because they're going to have a different list than somebody else, more than likely. There's going to be some overlap, and that's what you want to prevent. And if you go to multiple brokers, tell the second broker after you get the first list, be like, hey, this has already been presented to these. I'm looking for the best quote out of this. And so I don't know how that'll fly, but that's what I went through in this last week, and it sucked.
That is great golden nugget right there. Because, I mean, that's a great tip, and a lot of people don't know that.
And by the way, it is astounding the difference in premium cost in commercial insurance right now. We got one quote for $40,000, and the other one was $25,000 for an annual policy. And the
deductible was crazy, huh?
Yeah, and the cheaper one was actually way less like restrictions and like requirements for it. It's the Wild West out there right now in insurance. But it really is.
But you have to look at the deductible and how they handle it. They're not fixed deductibles. They're usually a percentage base.
Right. Yeah. And it was, I think we were actually able to get 1% on wind and hail, which is not super common now. Now it's like 2% or it's a flat, whatever the property value is or the insured value. Anyway, we've covered a lot of insurance lately, but just learn from my mistakes here in the last week or two. But that was today's golden nugget.
Very, very important topics, no matter how boring it is. Stay tuned for Austin Chambers, but also stay tuned to the future episodes that we have coming up because we have some great content coming to you guys. So definitely check it out.
Quit sitting on your thumbs and give us a 5-star review, damn it. We need it. So, this was a great episode with Austin Chambers. If you love Airbnbs, or maybe you're looking at getting started in the business and you want to learn some tips and tricks, stuff to look out for, this is an awesome episode for you to tune into. And he's just a charismatic dude and fun, and like he has a lot going on in his life, has some pretty good approaches and tools and systems that I think everybody can get something out of this.
Welcome to REIA Radio, episode 124 with Austin Chambers.
Nice. Austin, what is it like arbitraging Airbnbs?
It's a little bit different.
So how does that even work, really? So the concept of arbitraging. Well, actually, why don't you explain it? Since
Sure.
You're the expert.
Yeah, and I kind of backed into this one, so it wasn't something I was actively looking to do. One of my good buddies took a job down in Kansas City, and he had his house here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And he called me over like a lot of people do because they know I do Airbnb quite a bit. And he's like, hey, can you help me out? Can you give me some hints? Can you tell me what I need to do? And so I went over and, we had some drinks and we went over it. And then like 3 weeks later, he's like, dude, I'm so overwhelmed. Can you like take this over for me? And I was like, sure. And I started out, I was like, basically I'll co-host for you for a certain percentage. And then, a few months went by and I'm like, well, I'd much rather just rent this from you instead for a number that makes sense to you. And then I will arbitrage it. And then, I pay him $2,000 a month for his place. And then I short-term or mid-term rent it. I've been doing a lot of mid-term rentals with his place for whatever money. And then I take the difference as profit.
Have you had and how long have you been doing that? And do you do that for more than one property or just the one?
Just the one
Okay.
as of now. It's something I'll probably look into doing a little bit more as we go along. So this one was really nice because it was already furnished. I didn't have to worry about doing that, which is a big part of arbitrage. That's a big expense up front.
It's a budget that a lot of people don't line item either when they're putting together doing a potential short-term rental.
Sure, and this is a 4-bed, 3.5 bath house.
Oh, it's big. You got to have a lot of furnishings.
It's a fairly good size. So you're talking about furnishing
20,000+.
Not in my world, but in most people's world. I'm a marketplace, Facebook marketplace hound.
Side of the road. Hey, look, a sofa.
Yeah,
Throw that one in the
I
Airbnb.
wouldn't go that far.
Oh,
Reupholster it and call it good.
But you can go on marketplace and get a $2,000 sofa for $400. That doesn't, that looks nice as, from a smoke-free home and things along those lines. So that's worth it to save that $1,500, to me, to go take my truck and trailer and go pick that couch up.
I just got 3 arcade games, so those little mini arcade games for $400 off Marketplace.
Ooh,
You betcha.
That's really good.
So that is my guilty pleasure as an Airbnb host. It's a way for me to live out my childhood dreams. I put an arcade in every single one of my places.
I thought I was playing around with doing that. I just don't have a good spot in mind. The layout is a little bit weird, so I still may eventually, but I'm just kind of rolling without it right now.
Just give me a full-size shuffleboard and a nice pinball machine, and I'll be really happy.
Shuffleboard's a little difficult though, because then you get that.
Those are long.
They're long. They take up a ton of space, and then you have the salt everywhere. Like kids come. And if you ever see a toddler like in a bar when they're playing on the shuffleboard table, they're just taking it and they're just shoving it like, over the right shoulder for luck.
Salt Bay.
Yeah, exactly. So then that causes a whole nother issue, So, I always look at things from a maintenance standpoint and from a cleaning standpoint. How easy is it to maintain and how easy is it to clean? And then obviously how much does it cost?
This is getting in the weeds a little bit here,
Sure.
but he's still on the hook for the insurance policy, right?
Yes.
You're just paying him a lease amount, a pre-agreed upon lease amount, and then he's just like any other landlord at that point,
Yes.
more or less, right?
Yeah, more or less. And then I have my own personal business insurance that covers liability and things like that. And I only do Airbnb with that property because they have a secondary business insurance as well.
And okay, so you rent it for $2,000. Like, how do you think you do on it? I mean,
it depends. So, like right now, I just had people move into it last month, and it's an over $5,000 booking for a month. So, I mean, doing pretty well on that one.
Yeah.
And then but
so
sometimes
winter
it'll be
probably
lower.
sucks here.
You would think so, but this last winter, I had somebody come in and they had their house explosion, and so house exploded. And so they needed a place to stay, and it was an insurance stay.
Does this happen often? Like somebody's house explodes?
I have an insurance stay in one of my rentals right now, but it was a house fire.
House explode, no. House fires,
Yeah,
more
sure.
often. Tornado damage, like we just had roll through Omaha here. A lot of people looking for. I had quite a few inquiries into our place for then, but I didn't really have the time available for them. I didn't have 6 months at any of my places.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
There was a local member in our group, and he got $100,000 for a year rental of his high-end property.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they can pay anywhere from, I think the least expensive one that I've had, I rented it for $3,300 a month, and that was at this arbitrage property over the winter. So it was December, January, February.
Dang.
And it was $3,300 a month. I'm happy about that. We're making money in our slowest months of the year. And that's kind of the goal is you try to break even or make a little bit of money in the slow months, and then you rake it in the heavy months. So
I would think now, since this was a buddy of yours, I would think that does make sense to me because I think we've had a guest or two on before that have done arbitrage plays before, but didn't somebody get busted? I can't remember who it was. We had a guest on, and
it was a national person that.
Yeah,
it was
Ziana.
Ziana.
Yeah. I think she got nailed by the somebody saw it that was listed, and the owner busted her on it,
and then Airbnb'd it after her. Remember that?
Yeah.
So I follow a lot of the Facebook pages and everything along those lines. I mean, the big thing, if you are going to go into this, more, which it is a great way to build your cash flow, right? You're not on the hook for a ton of money if stuff goes bad. It's not nearly as much upfront costs as what it is to purchase a property.
Sure.
But you have to be upfront with the landlord. And there are benefits to it as well. You know, you can tell them, hey, this house is going to be professionally cleaned 2 to 3 times a week. You don't got to worry about it getting trashed. As the Airbnb owner, operator, whatever you want to call it, I'll take care of any maintenance requests up to $200 or $300. You know, I'll just take care of that. I'm not going to bother you with that unless it's something big. You know, you can take my professional photos and use them if you want to for future marketing. You know?
I think honestly, as I would rent, I would lease mine for the purpose of arbitrage. Like some of my properties, I'd lease to you, and if you wanted to arbitrage them, great. I mean,
Sure.
if I'm getting market rent, because you also have the backstop on this, where guests. I mean, in theory, here I know there's bad apples, but you have them worried about getting a bad rating.
Yes.
On Airbnb, so that's kind of a check and balance with. Whereas you roll the dice with long-term renters a lot of times. They may have good references or whatever, but you may be talking to their mom and their brother and you don't realize it or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool play on it in the Airbnb space. And you almost like whatever your lease amount is. So in this case, it was $2,000. You just look at that as like, okay, what would my loan payment be if I owned this?
Sure.
And then you're making the spread.
Yeah.
You're just not paying down the note on it, gaining equity and tax benefits and all that stuff. So that's
Sure.
the only difference, right? I mean,
Yeah,
more or less.
Yeah, you don't get any of the traditional real estate benefits, right? Yeah, and that's that's one thing. But if you're already managing other properties, it's just one more property add in, and you're adding to your monthly cash flow. So, I mean, just like a lot of real estate, it's always cash flow versus appreciation. You get into that, conversation with so many people all the time. And what's better? It's the same kind of deal in Airbnb world. Is arbitrage better or is owning better? I think owning's better if you can, but it costs way more, to start up a property. So
I had a client that actually took an 8-unit building and he rented out each unit to arbitraging.
Yeah.
So he, and then he worked out specific deals for people that didn't have the money to do the deposits. He said, okay, so your deposit's going to be that all the furniture stays and I get to take over your business if you can't maintain the payments or
sure,
if you lose the place. And that was his earnest deposit.
I think that's a great
just move
idea
forward with it.
as far as to a certain extent, as far as arbitraging an entire building. Because the biggest issue you have with Airbnb is neighbors. That's the number one headache is, and if you have an 8-unit and you have 6 of them which are long-term tenants and 2 that are Airbnbs, and then those 6 people who are there long-term don't like that they're Airbnb in the 2, it can be a pain in the butt.
So my 5 units all Airbnbs.
Sure.
Or midterms.
Yeah, but they're all expecting that. They're all in for short term. It's kind of like a hotel. You walk into it and it's like, well, I'm expecting there to be a little bit of noise and I'm expecting there to be this and that. So it's when you kind of do a full on mixture that can, with apartments especially, that can sometimes lead to issues.
I was thinking about renting out the units to people who want to arbitrage it individually so I could get the leases in place. And then I could say, hey, I got these leases in place. Here's the value of the building, and then I charge a higher amount because it's fully furnished and ready to go.
Yeah, you're kind of gaming the system at that point.
So that's actually part of my current game plan. Is I'm buying properties, I'm renovating them, I'm Airbnb-ing them for a year, and then I have a proof of concept with how much it can make in a year. And then I can go to sell them, and I can 1031 them into bigger properties, or I can just sell them for less capital gains.
Interesting. So that I don't think we've ever heard that approach. So you're basically turning what would normally be like a flip,
Sure.
more or less, and it's more like a long flip.
Yes.
And the benefit of holding it for a year and a day is your capital gains tax that you're going to pay, and I don't know what it is on that. Is it 15 plus state for long term?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
15% plus state, and so you're normally going to be on the hook if you buy and sell a property within a year, and your intent was to buy it and sell it. And actually, asterisk here.
Yes,
I'm not
please.
a CPA. I'm not an attorney. Don't listen to me at all. Entertainment value only. But that's Yeah, that's cool because normally if you flip a property, you're getting taxed at a regular income tax rate, whatever that is for you.
Yes.
And with this one, if you hold it for a year and a day, then you're gonna get quite a bit less in capital gains taxes versus regular income.
Absolutely.
In theory.
And you make money for a year, right? When you're Airbnb-ing it, you make significantly more money than as a long-term rental.
Okay,
typically.
and you have you mentioned you have 6 total
I have
Airbnbs.
6, yes.
So 5 are owned
Yes.
and 1's arbitraged.
Correct.
Okay, and then those do you have long-term rentals or any other type of holdings as well, or are you kind of all in on the
I'm
Airbnb
all
thing?
in on that right now.
What
So,
now? Okay, when you sell one, have you done that yet, where you've executed on your plan? Or?
as of now, no.
Okay.
So we have one on the market down at Lake of the Ozarks that we're looking to sell currently.
Oh, gotcha. And you're gonna 1031 exchange that into another property. What is that other property going to look like? Is that also going to be an Airbnb, or are you going to get into more long-term holdings with your?
More than likely, we're kind of looking into more, buying more land and putting smaller like cabins. Maybe buy something on the river here, and putting in a bunch of like smaller cabins and a pool and a little clubhouse, things like that. So that's kind of next on the list.
And that's kind of your niche. Every property you find has a pool, right?
Not everyone, but
Okay.
a lot of them. Pools, hot tubs, game rooms, high-end amenities. That's kind of more of what I look for. I look at when I want to go stay at a place, what are some things that I want to have there for my family, and as Airbnb in general has started to slow down for a lot of people, I haven't seen much of that because most of my places are higher end, and the ones that aren't, like the one I'm arbitraging, doesn't have anything crazy. I've transitioned more to midterm rentals and trying to get more insurance stays or contractors. Contractors are huge. They'll pay pretty good money for it. They'll put 5 or 6 guys into the unit. I'll provide an air mattress if I need to for them. That's what we're doing for this arbitrage unit in Lincoln.
By the way, I have like 20 air mattresses if you ever need one.
How are you? Not to give away all your secrets here, but how do you get that type of a guest?
Yeah,
you said insurance and contractors. Like, I know Ted, you've done that too, electricians and whatnot. What do you do for outreach on that?
Yeah, so some of it just comes naturally, right, through Airbnb. I mean, contractors are looking for a place that has 30 days open, and that's not super easy to find in the Airbnb world. So some of it just comes naturally. I don't open up my calendar at that place very far out because I want to get long stays. That's really my goal. So I only open up within 2 weeks.
So do you have a minimum? What's your minimum stay then?
Most of my houses are 2 nights.
Okay,
So
you're not saying you have to stay for at least a month or you have to stay at least 2 weeks or whatever. Okay.
I'm not necessarily staying that, but on this one I don't do instant book. So I'll see. I'm like, does this booking fit into what I want? And if it's like 2 months out for 2 nights, I'm probably going to decline that stay because I'd much rather have a contractor crew come in because that will really break up those 2 months, right? And I'm not going to cancel on anybody if they've already booked. So, so that's why I don't do instant book on that specific property, even though I do it on most of mine.
Now, are you managing your own, or do you have a third-party property manager, or is it you and your family, or how's that work?
Yeah, so I manage. Me and my wife manage all of our properties.
Okay.
So we have partners on, and it's all family-based, right? So we have 2 properties down at Lake of the Ozarks, and we are in a partnership with my sister-in-law and her husband. And that's kind of how we got started, was we wanted a lake house that we could all share and have great memories. And we were like, oh, hopefully we can Airbnb this and it'll break even and we don't have to keep putting money into it. And then the first year after COVID, and it just blew up. And we were making so much money that we were like, okay, let's look at buying a second one. So then 7 months after we bought the first one, when we were in the middle of a peak season in the Ozarks, we bought a second one.
Now, are these condos or are they houses?
They're houses.
And they're lakefront?
They're lakefront. Yep.
Okay.
So not inexpensive, houses. I think we bought the first one for $330, and it needed work. And, me being a handy person, my brother-in-law being a handy person, we went to work on it, And
we call them handy capable now.
Yeah,
just so you know.
That's fair. I don't
know whether the radio edit that or not. We'll leave it in.
Yeah, I like it. So yeah, we bought the 2 down there, and then my parents kind of wanted in on the action, and so they were like, "Hey, do you want to buy one with us here?" It's like, sure. So we bought one in Omaha. And then the next year we bought one in Lincoln. And we just kind of kept upgrading and getting them better and better. And every time we get money, it kind of goes right back into the property.
Yeah. Hey, do you know Dustin Talaco?
Yes. Yeah, I've talked to Dustin quite a bit.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because he was a guest on the show, and at the time when we had him on, I think he had 3 in the Ozarks.
Yep.
That he was leasing out, and I think his were all condos, if I remember right.
Yeah, he's got a house. He's got at least one house that I know of down there now.
Yeah, I assumed he'd probably grown it.
So, although I will say, I won't buy another one down there.
Is it getting saturated?
It's extremely saturated, and so now in the summer months, not a big deal.
It's great, right?
Booking, but I mean, really, once you get outside of the mid-May to mid-September, it is a ghost town for Airbnbs there.
Really?
A lot of people will try and do like a 5 or 6 month stay over the winter. I typically go in and renovate bathrooms, kitchens.
Oh, okay. So you use the downtime to basically do renos.
Yeah, and to upgrade the property
Yeah,
and try to
makes
make it worth
sense.
more. So,
That's cool.
With all these pools and hot tubs, how are you maintaining all these? Because
I quit my 9 to 5.
I have a pool in my backyard, and it is a full-time job. I'm pool boy every day, especially since we had a ton of rain recently.
Sure.
I had a river going through my backyard and have wheelbarrows of mud inside my pool right now.
Yeah.
So, like, how are you taking care of these? Because it's daily cleaning, daily chemical checks. What are you doing?
Yeah, I don't typically do daily. I do 2
Daily?
Yeah.
You're talking to a guy that gets his hair cut once a week, washes his car literally every day. Okay, so you're not normal, Ted. Just so I don't know if you know this.
I haven't cut my hair in quite a while.
Yeah, that clearly.
So I typically do twice a week.
Okay.
So the way we do it
But
is...
like your pool filters and stuff, you can't. You really go twice a week with all those?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So as long as what I do is I pay professional pool service to come once a week, and then I typically go the second time a week. And if we have a storm, I'll reach out to our guests and be like, hey, we had a storm last night. I'm going to come check the chemicals, make sure they're good, and make sure that there's enough chlorine tablets in the skimmer and things that'll keep it going for the next couple days.
But do you have pools in Ozarks?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah. Right. No chance.
So
I mean, that's a 8-hour drive, right?
No, it's for me. I live in Lincoln.
6.5.
Yeah, it's even less for me. Door to door, if I don't make any stops, which I have done 2 out of like my 40-some trips that I've done down there.
Just pee in a bottle.
Yeah, Gatorade bottle usually. As soon as
So I have
I'm
an
done with
electric truck, so I'd have to stop and charge twice.
Yeah,
but
good luck there.
It's 5 hours and 15 minutes door to door for me from my house in Southeast Lincoln to our. Basically, either one of our places in the Ozarks.
Okay.
Which usually turns into about 6.5 hour when I have the kids with me.
Because I am literally cleaning my pool 1 to 2 times a day. A lot of times.
Why? Dude, people don't do that.
Well, I have trees surrounded on it, and the filters clog up, and then if that gets in the pump will seed because the needles
seed.
Do you use filter socks?
I have before, yes, but
Sure.
But they get so clogged. I mean,
That's a daily change if you use them.
I have 8 pine trees around my house, around my pool, so it just.
I will say that when I'm looking at properties that have pools, and I look at every
Seas was the word, by the way. Seas,
and
not
pine
seed.
trees don't have leaves, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
pine needles.
There's other trees around, and they all blow in. But
Sure. So when I'm looking at a property that has a pool, which I do look at every single property between Lincoln and Omaha that has a pool that comes on the market, I look at every single one of them. But one thing that I do look for is how many trees are around, and if it's just surrounded by them, I'm not going to buy that because I know it's going to take way more maintenance.
It looks really pretty.
Sure, yeah, and that's great.
But especially pine trees. People do not plant pine trees around your pools. Do not do it.
You get pine cones falling in?
Cones, but I mean the needles.
Sure.
Well, I'll tell you what tree you do not want is an ash tree. They have those little tiny helicopters, and they do that. I don't know why, but ours do it like 2 or 3 times a year, and they are everywhere, and they sprout. When they can grow on anything, and and they get in your deck, like in between the boards. And they stick up, and the sharp part sticks up. So, like, if you go out there and you're like, oh, I have to go pick something up on the deck or whatever, you walk out there and they just, like, stab the crap out of your feet or whatever. So don't get ash trees. They're terrible. I don't know why my neighbors planted them.
What do you pay for those pool services to get done?
It's around
fixated on the pools.
It's around $100 a week.
Okay.
So
I mean, this is a big deal.
Which, from an
if you're buying
Airbnb
this.
standpoint, I'm getting basically an extra $100 a day for having a pool.
Okay.
So if I can rent it 5 days a week, I'm making $500, and I'm paying somebody $100. I usually go once because I'm in Omaha, living in Lincoln. It's about an hour drive to Omaha, and I'm here at least 3 times a week for either softball or for working on properties or anything along those lines.
Okay, what about the hot tubs? What kind of maintenance do you need with that?
Yeah, so hot tubs is similar. I service it in between every stay. So I typically won't do a full drain between every stay, but I'll drain a little bit of the water and I'll bring in some fresh water. We rebalance chemicals. And then what I do is I actually leave some prepackaged chemicals for our guests. And I just tell them, hey, every time you get out of it, throw in a little cup of shock, throw in this cup of chlorine, and then it stays pretty good for most of the summer. And then once a month, I will do a complete drain and refill when I don't have anybody staying that day.
That's good to know. Okay, great tips. Thank you. What's your one question that you're dying to ask there, Owen?
It's not a question. It was just a comment, but I couldn't get into word in. Anyway, are you done talking about pools and hot tubs?
What's
or
my
are we
life?
good?
Ted's been so excited for this conversation.
No, I was just I was thinking of like self-managing and like the drama around it sometimes.
Sure.
And I have an Airbnb unit, and it's got bad windows. They'd been replaced. They're like metal windows, but they were done probably in the early 90s.
Sure.
And they leak. And I should have fixed them before I brought it online as an Airbnb, because now I'm kind of like, well, I only have like 3 days to, I have to pull it off the market or whatever just in case somebody books it, and but I need to replace the windows because every time we have a rainstorm now, I get water on the sills, so I have like 4 or 5 windows that just get water there. So this morning I have a guest coming this weekend, right? And on the way here, I stopped there because like I always stop the day before just to make sure like is it clean, is there trash on the ground, or there cigarette butts, whatever, you know what I mean?
That's a newbie deal.
I know. But I go there and there's a trash can right by the front entry that's steps, right? You go up a flight of steps and there's a trash can on the side of it and it's just like overflowing. Yeah. And I think they pick it up today, but I don't have any idea what time. Yeah. And I go over there, and you see what I'm wearing, right? I have a white shirt, and I have freaking white shoes on that I've worn like literally 1 or 2 other times. And I'm like, I don't know why I bought them anyway. But I have an outfit where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to stop by there. I'm like, this was a terrible plan because there's this huge, it's a contractor size trash bag. So like a, whatever it is, 50 gallon trash bag. And it was overflowing. And so I go to pick this thing up, and I'm trying to be careful so I don't get crap all over my clothes and shoes and whatever. And I pull this bag out, and it's like 100 pounds because it had been raining, right? We've had so many storms. So I'm like, oh my God, this is, and I'm like, I'm trying not to dislocate my back and all that.
Is it just an open trash can?
No, it has a lid, but of course people don't close the lid.
Sure.
So it's full of water and all kinds of food and gross stuff. So I'm trying to be careful and like keep my feet away from it. So I lift this thing out and I get it out and it's super heavy. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go through the but here's the thing. The trash receptacle or the big container of trash is on the back balcony and it's fenced in, so you can't access it from the ground level. Okay. And you have to basically go and you open a balcony door and you throw your trash down and it goes in it, whatever. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do that. So I get it out, I tie it, I pick it up, and it there's a hole in the bottom of it, and all this disgusting trash water goes all over and they're perforated, like the tops of them. See them, Ted? Yep. It goes right in. No, they're not Crocs. See, Justin, they're actually pretty nice. Anyway, so I have trash feet right now, and I'm like, I don't know if they smell or not because I'm probably just used to it by now. So let me know if you catch some hoopa stank.
I'll say
you
though,
always smell. So I'm used to it.
Oh,
a lot of that stuff, as far as wanting to stop by the day of every stay, a lot of that comes down to trust with your cleaners, right? So when you find a really good cleaning crew that comes in and takes care of your property, and they send you pictures of when it's done, and they send you pictures of any damages that you have, it makes life a lot easier. It makes you feel more comfortable. Here's
the problem with this one it's in an apartment building.
Sure.
That is not they're not all Airbnbs. You know what I mean? It's just the one unit.
Yeah.
So I don't have any control at all of the common areas. So I have to make sure that those are like people that morning didn't come and do whatever. So I'm making an excuse here, but
No, I hear you. I mean, so every property I make like a detailed cleaning checklist and a monthly checklist, and this is what I want my cleaners to go over, and that would be probably something that I would check, have them check on.
But the window thing, like I can't.
Oh, yeah.
That happened last night at 3 a.m. So
Yeah.
it's like I have to do that every time it rains anyway. So
Yeah, and that's kind of
Until I
difficult,
replace the windows.
and that's also part of the reason why I like the Airbnb model, right? You can do these things a little bit more. It makes it easier to replace windows or replace a toilet or replace whatever you need to replace because you're making enough money that it's fine.
Yeah.
When you're doing long-term rental, which I have done, and I got started in real estate in 2012 when I bought my first duplex, my first house. I house hacked it, right? And then I sold it in 2018. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I hated it.
Oh, really?
I really hated it. And part of it is just because I self-managed. And even though I worked for a property management company, I knew everything I was supposed to be doing. I don't have that bone in my body to like kind of be the not nice guy and like not try to help every person out or listen to every sob story you hear and just don't care about it.
I mean, you are wearing a kitty cat T-shirt.
Hey, Meow Wars. 4-year-old picked it out.
I mean, right there, there's not a mean bone in your body if you're wearing that shirt.
So you mentioned that you worked for a property management company, and you also mentioned that your first house was a duplex that you house hacked.
Yes.
I want to dig into those two things.
Sure.
The first one, how did you know what house hacking was, and why did you buy a duplex originally?
And this is funny. Like I always tell people, my first mentor was Scott McGilvery. I don't know if guys know who that is.
I don't.
Oh yeah, Canadian.
Yep.
What's his show?
So it was Income Property was the first
Properties.
one. And like Income Property was the first one, and then he went into Vacation House Rules, which is an Airbnb one. But it used to be like he had an HGTV show, and it was Income Property, and they would basically just help people renovate a basement or an attic to turn it into an apartment so that they could afford the house that they're living in because they couldn't do it anymore.
Now, was he actually? Did he know he was mentoring you, or he was mentoring you?
No, just through HGTV.
Okay, I didn't know if he was like a paid mentorship.
Just through like the completely fake, fake HGTV show. Like, who knows how much of it's real? I'm sure it's like 5%, right? But like I had gone through a tough time, like a lot of people did in 2008. I was 23 at that time. I had worked for a Denver mattress, so a mattress company, and I was a sales guy, and I promoted out to Rockford, Illinois, which is a car factory town. So then we went through that depression of 2008, and my salary went from making $65,000 as a 23-year-old, it's pretty good at the time, to making like $20,000 like overnight because it's a commission-based job even as a manager. So like when I went through that, and then I moved back home. I moved back in with my parents, and like it was just kind of a mindset thing, right? Like this is something you can do to help you get ahead in life. You can own a property, you can make it work, and that's like it just kind of fed me, and it fed my desire. And then so I bought the duplex. I had 2 roommates on my side, and I rented out the other side. The people had been there for 22, 23 years when I bought it in the other side, so they were paying like $300 under market rent.
Oh, I thought you were going to say $300.
Yeah.
Oh, it's pretty close. So they had just had their rent raised to $450 at the time, and it was $390 before that, and they'd had it raised like 6 months before I bought the property.
With the new lease?
Huh? No lease, like handshake deals, old school landlords, things like that. So I went in, and the first basically right away I had a conversation with them, and I'm like, hey, I need to raise your rent to $510. It's $60 a month. It's basically 10%, a little over 10%. And then I'm going to raise it $50 a year moving forward until we get up to market rent, which was like $750 or $800. Well,
that was really nice of you, by the way.
Yeah, I felt like it was at the time, and they're like, oh man, is it really that for market rent? And I'm like, well, and I showed them all the comparables. I was like, here's 3 properties for rent in this area. It was like $750, $815, $775, whatever it was. And so I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you out. And I'm like, if I got my 2 roommates and you paying $515, that's covering my mortgage. It was only $120,000 property.
Okay.
So like I didn't really care, and then, they were such nice people, and like he kind of helped me out a lot. He was a pretty handy person, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So I just kind of jumped in, and he like lend me tools and helped me out, and I never raised the rent again. I owned the property for 6 years. So I kept it at $510 the entire time. I couldn't do it to him. And then right about the time I was ready to start raising rent again, I had moved out. I was renting both sides. He passed away. And he had some kind of debilitating disease where he just deteriorated quickly.
Yeah.
And then so I really couldn't do it. And then the other side was a whole nother host of issues with people that I rented to.
In your former owner unit?
Yeah, in my former owner unit. And I'm like, God, I'm making like $100 a month on this property. Like I'm there way more than I need to be. It's a 30-minute drive there, with CapEx and with maintenance. I'm probably not making any money, and I just and I don't want to raise these people rent. I can't do it to them. I'm just selling the property to make it easier on me.
We've all been there, man.
So that was kind of, I'm like, I don't think I want to do this. And then, we bought that lake house, we got into Airbnb, and it was like such a perfect fit for me. Like I'm just, I can be that more of a host mentality, that more hospitable, kind of help people out, help them make great experiences. And then, if you have a crappy tenant like I had in my old host unit, they're gone in 3 days, 5 days, instead of months or years. And then you're making more money.
No evictions.
No evictions.
Yep. And if you're really anal retentive on the cleaning and the maintenance of the property, because when you spend so much money redoing it to make it look so nice,
sure,
it's nice to be able to keep it nice, and it retains its value, in my opinion. And you got somebody to go back on if there's a credit card on file and be like, hey, I'm going to charge you for the damages.
Sure. Which I don't do a lot, very rarely actually. My kind of thought process is, as long as it's under $100 worth of damages, I'm just going to eat it. And most times it is. It's very rarely more than that. So, and now I feel I kind of price myself out of some of the
jackasses.
Yeah, we'll go with that. It's crazy, but people are like, don't you want to lower your price to get better reviews? I'm like, no, I want to raise my price to get better guests. Like every single time I've had an issue over the last 4 years has been when my prices have been at the lowest.
That's true.
Yeah, you mentioned that in the last episode too, Ted, about getting higher quality guests with your price points.
Sure.
But we started talking about this a little bit before we hit record. Have you? I had a situation last year, and I only have one Airbnb, and I suck at it. As we've detailed,
you don't suck at it.
As
you need
we've
more
chronicled extensively here. But I had an inquiry from a potential guest that wanted to book, and then I got a notice from Airbnb that said, I'm paraphrasing here, but it was basically like, there's a high likelihood, or we think there's a high likelihood that this is a party situation. So warning, basically like, don't book this, stay. And I didn't. And then they asked me, the person inquiring, they're like, hey, what's going on? And I said, well, I got notified by Airbnb that there's a high risk of a party situation here, and then they didn't even really argue with it. They're like, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. I'm like,
because they probably work in a party.
Yeah, right. I'm like, okay, got it, bachelor party. No, but what does that mean? Like, how do they have any idea what guests' intentions are? Or is it because of past reviews?
No,
I don't understand.
Not typically. Yeah, so this is something that we get a fair amount whenever Airbnb is blocking a booking, and they have algorithms that help out to figure out, if they feel they should allow it or not. My places, being the type of places they are with pools and hot tubs, it can tend to lend itself to that crowd. So what Airbnb typically does is they look at a plethora of factors, but basically they're looking at what the age of the person booking is.
They're searching the social media pages.
Yeah, I don't think they're that in depth. After talking to their customer service reps a bunch of times, there's not a lot going on behind the scenes there. However, they have algorithms that are set up, and what they're looking at is the age of the guest, where the guest is located. Are they local to the area? how many days are they booking? Is it a 1 or a 2 day stay, or are they booking for a week or 2 weeks? Is it a holiday weekend is a huge one. I would say 98% of the times that I get these blocked booking requests from Airbnb saying it's a high risk of party is because it's on Memorial Weekend or 4th of July or Halloween, and it's a local young guest, and they're trying to book that place.
What if you have Instabook set up? Does it still
blocks it automatically
and then gives you the option to respond or not?
So you can communicate with them. There is absolutely nothing that you can do to accept that booking.
Oh, really?
There's nothing.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
No, they block it, and there is nothing that you can do. And when I first started getting them, I'd reach out to Airbnb and I'd be like,
pissed off.
Hey, this is a guy, and it's just his family of 4, and they're trying to book this place, for this weekend, and they're not able to. And, they basically say, well, we flagged it as a high risk of party, and we're not going to take that risk. That's basically what Airbnb says. So I basically, from the last probably year and a half or 2 years, I basically have told people that, hey, you need to contact Airbnb, and I'll let them spin their wheels instead of me.
Interesting. I'm really surprised, actually, that they haven't been sued like over and over and over again for age discrimination or something to that effect where... You know what I mean? That's a weird, how can they just arbitrarily decide whether I can stay somewhere or not with 7 of my buddies on 4th of July weekend?
And to put a little bit of an asterisk on it, I don't know what their exact parameters are, but this is basically what we've kind of been told is they're looking for locals who are booking holiday weekends, short stays at party type properties.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily a party type property, but large amount of guests. My smallest place sleeps 10. So out of the places that I have, I sleep anywhere from 10 to 17 people at our properties. So that's kind of what they're looking for, but it's almost always on holiday weekends.
And you get some badass places because I've been involved with some of the real estate sales of your properties, and I've seen your places, and I mean,
I love them.
Yeah, I mean, you get some nice spreads, unique houses.
Hey, let's if you don't mind, I have one question, and then I know Ted, you had a couple that you wanted to ask about this, but you mentioned when we were taking a break there a minute ago that you were specifically looking in Omaha for properties that had pools.
Yes.
And basically anything that's on the market that has a pool, you're looking at it. And you fell in love with one on 108th and Maple, which for those of you not around here is kind of like, I don't know, the new Midtown.
It's not a super nice.
It's kind of by the
medium class.
It's by the interstate. And
by 680.
I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. It's like,
it's actually a pretty high rental area, long-term rentals. There's lots of duplexes. There's lots of kind of starter homes. So you get people renting a lot of the properties. I'd say it's probably a 50-50 mix between rentals and purchasers. And I actually like that for the Airbnb model better. First of all, you're getting a better price on the property. People coming in from town, as long as it's still in a decent area, they don't know. They don't know if it's a really nice, area of Omaha. They're looking at the property and they're looking at the reviews. So it's a nice area. It's not a great area. But then you also get a lot less picky neighbors. Most of them are renting.
That's a good point.
People who are buying properties $500,000 and up, they don't typically want to have an Airbnb as a neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just a misconception of how they're going to ran. And I shouldn't even say misconception because a lot of them ran that way, right? They're just people come and they party in them and they bring lots of cars and they do this and that, and it really pisses neighbors off. And so when you're in a little bit of a lower price, not quite as nice of a neighborhood, people are renting a lot more, you don't see as much of that. You don't see as much as neighbors talking to neighbors. So that's kind of what I typically try to focus on.
Interesting. Yeah, everybody's in the. It's just so funny to me how everybody has their own thing and what they look for.
Sure.
Nobody's exactly the same.
But yeah, to speak to your point, I went to an open house on that property, and as soon as I walked in the door, it was fixed up nicely. It was under $300,000 was the list price, but it had engineered hardwood everywhere. It had granite countertops. It was freshly painted. Had a pool with 2 different decks and a paver patio in the back. a Ninja Warrior course, a zip line.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, I walk through this and I'm like, dude, I have to have it.
What-
I don't really care what it costs. I have to have it because I know how well it's going to do.
What was it? An Airbnb before?
It was not. Nope. So the neighbors all called the guy who owned it before. They called him Tim the Toolman Taylor because he was like always tinkering on his properties.
Yeah.
But he was very meticulous. It had a Thrasher waterproofing system in it. For those who don't know Thrasher locally, it's the most expensive, but probably the best company as far as taking care of waterproofing problems in basements. So he,
Full
he took care of
disclosure,
it.
we both worked there at the same time.
We did.
That's how we met.
Are we going to get them as a sponsor? I feel like we've mentioned them like literally every other.
They're a sponsor of
episode.
my local group.
In fairness to all the other waterproofing companies out there, I have never used them because they are expensive. And to be honest, their installers are typically not been there a super long time because they have a pretty high turnover rate. But they dedicate a lot of people to customer service, and when you call them, you're getting to talk to somebody, and if there's an issue, they'll come out and take care of it. So while they are expensive, and I don't personally feel they're necessarily the best installers compared to what's out there, they take care of their customers. So
you mentioned this awesome house with the course in it. Have you guys heard about the Graceland coming up for sale?
Yeah.
So
like the Graceland.
The Graceland.
No, I hadn't.
So supposedly, and I'm going somewhere with this. So supposedly they faulted on their loans, and the house was used as a $3.2 million line of collateral. That Presley that just died, the daughter. Took this loan out against the property and didn't get paid, obviously. So now they now putting the house into foreclosure because it's owned by the family, and so wouldn't you want to go on the auction steps and get this property for an Airbnb?
yeah, that'd be awesome. But
how much do you think you get a night for Graceland?
God.
17,000 square foot.
God, but what would your freaking costs be on that?
I mean, it'd be insane. But
Insurance, taxes.
yeah,
like-
but here's the thing:
It's Graceland.
when you're talking about
It's a touring.
when you're talking
destination.
about Airbnbs in general, there's always someone that's going to pay your price, right? So, it's an experience factor. I would have never thought that this house that I bought for under $300,000 would at times rent for $1,000 a month. Or, sorry, $1,000 a night. But it does, during College World Series and Slump Busters. And I get baseball families during the College World Series because there's a huge youth baseball tournament at the same time where teams come from all over the country. They coordinate it with the College World Series so that they can be here and get to the games and also play in this tournament. But because of that, what is already a tough to find a place area in Omaha because of the College World Series and so many people coming in, it just gets that much more because now you have another 3,000 to 5,000 people coming in for a baseball tournament, at the same time. So
my downtown house right now, which doesn't have a pool or a hot tub yet, I'm getting $770 a night.
Yeah.
For a CWS.
yeah, and I probably could have gotten more, to be honest. I mean, we've been booked for 3 months at $1,000 a night. For this summer tournament, I probably could have put it up $1,200 to $1,500, and I'm sure somebody would have paid it.
There's back in the first 20, 30 episodes that we did, we had Dan Zimmerman on.
Mm-hmm.
And, here in the Omaha market, we don't have, the $1 million house is not a common house. I mean, that's a really high-end house. And he's got $2 million properties now that are in Airbnb, and they're huge. And he says he's killing it on those.
Yeah, I keep seeing this property in Council Bluffs that has a pool on 4.5 acres, like up in the bluffs. And it's been on the market for 6 months. And it just stares at me every time I see it.
I know the house you're talking about. Yeah.
And I'm like, I have literally just stared at that. But it's just a higher price point than I feel comfortable with an Airbnb because you need to rent that thing for a lot of money to break even, especially with interest rates where they are right now. Mm-hmm. So if I'm taking an 8% interest rate on a house that's $850,000,
your payment's going to be about $7,500 a month.
right? And that's not including utilities. That's not including pool maintenance. Hot tub maintenance,
Fixing it up to where you need it to be.
Yeah,
Furnishing.
so I would think that I would need to be around $150,000 to $200,000 a year to be in a comfortable spot on that, and that's a pretty hefty chunk.
Maybe partner with Dan Zimmerman on that.
Or
Owen Dashner.
I have looked into partners on it, and I would consider it at that point. But it's just, yet again, I kind of like to be in that kind of area that's, kind of more of a middle class starter home area, just because it creates less headaches. Now this one's on a large lot of land, so that helps significantly.
My biggest fear is always legislation.
Sure.
And if you get really heavy on super high cost single family homes, and all of a sudden they ban Airbnbs in your entire city,
Or there's
Right.
there's another pandemic.
you're screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's my biggest fear, and like going heavy on those.
Yeah, so you say pandemic, and that is definitely true. That's actually how I got started, is we went down to a lake house in Texas for my brother's 50th birthday party in May of 2020. And so we were at this lake house where we could self-isolate, be away from everybody. And like my kids had such an amazing time. And the entire drive back, that's all me and my wife could talk about, is like how we can make this work. Let's try and figure out a way that we can get a lake house and we can have it pay for itself, and we can go and we can make memories every year. And that's how it started. And then it kind of all just snowballed from there.
I'm in the process of kind of rethinking my portfolio, and I'm selling some stuff off right now. And
Sure.
that's actually on my goal list, is to get something that could be a destination place not too far, within 5 hours, where it's on a lake,
Yep.
cabin, preferably. Something I could even take my camper to and have it outside there.
Yeah, we basically drew a 6-hour circle around our house, and then we cut off the top half because I didn't want to go any further north. I wanted to go south. And then we also wanted to be a couple more than at least 2.5 hours away, so it felt like a vacation when we were going. And then we wanted a place that Airbnb'd well. And it basically came down to Lake of the Ozarks and Branson, and we went back and forth, and we chose Lake of the Ozarks.
I was just in Branson, Missouri, a few weeks ago as a little family trip for spring break. And we rented a cabin, but a whole entire neighborhood was converted to cabins. They took a wooded area, and one company had like 20 cabins there. It was absolutely amazing. Each one had a hot tub. Each one had a charging station outside for your car. And it was just wooded, and it was beautiful. And I'm like, what a great concept that
Sure.
was.
Yeah.
And they did it right. I mean, it was a great experience.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a couple things that I have on my list, because I'm now self-managing my very first Airbnb, as I mentioned in the previous episodes a little bit today. I'm now to a point now that I've been doing this for 2.5 to 3 weeks. I've had 2 active stays, 1 5-star review, and got a stay moving in today. I have over $9,000 in bookings
Sure.
On the books between this month and next month right now. I feel like I'm doing good on it, but yeah, I don't know, because this is all pretty new to me on this side. I've always used a manager.
Yeah.
And I've never had a high-end rental property.
Sure.
Okay, so with that being said, I've turned to a lot of systems to try to help me with the process, which Owen has been giving me some shit about. But currently I'm using OwnerRez as they call it PMS, guys, which is a property management service. So I'm using OwnerRez. I've done a lot of checking around. They're the biggest, best, also the hardest to operate.
Yes.
There's like people like offering $1,500 to set up your OwnerRez.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's probably worth every penny.
And I feel like I got it pretty set up, but there's so much learning. There's like 140 plus other companies you can like plug into it too.
Yeah, there's lots, and every year it's growing and growing.
So I plugged in Price Labs, and I've plugged in Turno. So Price Labs prices out my properties for me, which has been really interesting to watch.
Sure.
I've also OwnerRez or Turno. I'm sorry. Turno is my cleaner service that I use. So I have a couple cleaners that I use. I connected them to the system. It notifies them when the cleaning needs to be done. It gives them my checklist. It has them upload the photos.
Yep.
The first 2 are free. Your first 2 properties are free for the service.
Hey, Ted, can I ask you something on that? So I have the only one I have is I just share my calendar with my cleaning company, and like all this happens automatically.
Yep.
Like they get all that. I give them a checklist.
Yep.
They have a restock, sheet or whatever. But I'm not I don't pay for it. Like what? Why not just do that?
Well, Turno's free for your first 2 properties, so you could use it and it's free. You can put your credit card in there. It'll actually pay them.
I think they still charge a percentage for your payment to the cleaners, though. I think it's like they charge 3 or 5% or something like that. At least it was when I was using it. But
and maybe that's the case. But right now, I haven't seen or read that so far. But I create my cleaning checklist. It notifies them they have to upload the photos in. and it's all automated. It connects to the Airbnb or owner res in my case, and it works with the system, tells them, gives them a time frame when to clean, and it's like an Uber system. It puts it out like a beacon. Hey, this
right, but like. I mean, this is all like if they see your calendar, you could just be like, "Hey, clean at 11 o'clock and get out of there by 2," and just leave your checklist.
It's just automated, and it clean and it pays them for you through your payment system. So it's more hands off. The reason I did this is that we interviewed Ryan Miller, which I bring up a lot.
Sure.
And Ryan Miller talked about how he was completely 100% hands off, and he became a super host within the first month and a half. And he never communicated to anybody because he had so many self-automated systems in place. So I don't pay anything for owner-res. I don't pay anything for Turno. I think owner-res costs me $40 a month. Price Labs costs me $20 a month.
And that's for the 2 properties?
For the one property I have
property
on it. Yeah.
On owner-res?
Yeah.
And say, because they charge per property, so the more you have, the more expensive it is.
But it also goes down quite a bit. So when property 2, it goes up to like 50 or 60 bucks.
Yeah, I think 2 through 5 is one tier, then like 6 through 10 is another tier, and then after you get to like 20 or whatever, which I'm not at, so I couldn't
it maxes out at like $500 a month.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm trying this stuff. What systems are you using? What have you used and didn't like?
So, yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I have gone through a lot of trials, kind of to what Owen's saying. We do most of the stuff ourselves still. I don't like sharing calendars because I have found then cleaners will see that, oh, you have a checkout today, but you don't have anyone checking in tonight, so I'm not going to go until later to clean it, right? And even if you have that conversation with them that, hey, it needs to be cleaned at 11:30, it starts to slip. It's happened with all three of the cleaners that I shared my calendar with to try and go there. And on Airbnb, you can just share the calendar. You don't have to give them access. You can just share the calendar. So that can be good. But me and my wife have a system. Basically, every Monday we go through our properties and we send out text messages to our cleaners to confirm. And then we go back and just check the day of. It's a little bit more work on our end than if you have an automated system, but it kind of provides us a little bit more peace of mind too than just like everything's running in the background. I don't know. I'm probably a little bit more of a control freak than than what some people are. But
I'm very much a control freak, so yeah, I get it.
So that's the way we do it as far as cleaners are concerned, is we have it set up every Monday. We send out a text. We send out a 6-week schedule to our cleaners, basically every 4 weeks, and let them know what a 6-week is. And then every Monday we send out a text that has the cleanings for that week and make sure we're on the schedule. And then if it's a same day turnover, I send a text in the morning. That's just like, hey, just confirming 11 o'clock today, you're going to be there. You need to be done by this time. And my cleaner is in Omaha especially is amazing. And they're in and out in an hour and a half, and they take all the laundry with them. And then they just switch it out. And so even if they're not there till 1, it's not a big deal. But
how should somebody determine what pricing is fair for a cleaner? Like how?
Yeah, so you're using Turno. I've used that a lot. I use that a lot.
But they're my cleaners.
Sure.
That are in the Turno system.
So,
I haven't used the Turno cleaner systems.
So I've used both. But I mean, there's a bunch of different ways. You can use Facebook, find your investors groups and see, hey, I have a 3-bed, 2-bath property with this many beds. Mm-hmm. But the amount of beds that you have in your house really dictates the price a lot, because that's, the laundry is the number one biggest pain point for cleaners and really for people running Airbnbs.
So break down how you do your cleaning and how you figure it's a fair price.
Yeah, so I do like to go on Turno when I'm looking for a new cleaner. And I've got an experience now, and I'm in 3 different markets. I know what a fair price is. I know what it should cost and what it shouldn't at this point. However, if you're just getting started, Turno is a fantastic place to start, because what you can do is you can put in your property, you can put in the size of the property, how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms it has, how many beds are in there, and then you can open it up for bid. And then you can come through and all the cleaners can bid on cleaning that property. So for when I found my last cleaner for this Omaha one, I got quotes. It's a 4-bed, 2.5 bath, and I have 6 beds in there because I have bunk beds. Mm-hmm. So we have 6 beds in there, and I put it on there, and I got quotes basically from $120 up to $275 to clean this property, including laundry. So Now, the nice thing about Turno, too, similar to Airbnb, is the cleaners have reviews. So you can go in and see, oh, these people have 17 reviews. They average 4.8 stars, and you can go from there. So that's typically the way I have been finding my cleaners lately.
Are your cleaners doing cleaning on site or taking the laundry with them and then having a cycle?
Both.
Okay.
I always make sure. I think it's really important. I have 3 sets of sheets for every bed. That's just the way I do it, and I have 2 comforters for every bed so that they can switch them out and they can clean them. Usually the way most of my cleaners handle it is they get as much laundry done on site as they can. It's almost always towels, comforters, maybe 1 set of sheets, and then they take the rest with them. So like my cleaner in Omaha, actually speaking of Dan Zimmerman, now has a deal.
Everybody uses his cleaning service, don't they?
Oh yeah, because he's like
Ben Katz has 85 Airbnbs and he's using them
because he's super reasonable, right? Like his prices are a point where investors are going to want to use him, and so he gets a ton of business from it. And I don't know, what's he got, 2 or 3 different laundromats now? He just keeps.
Dan's a genius.
He's getting them like candy, man. He's just like popping them in left and right. So
we're going to get him back on here
but
soon.
It's so funny because me and him are part of like every one of the same Facebook groups. Like we're on a laundromat Facebook group. We're on like a pool maintenance fitness group. We're on all the Airbnb Facebook groups. So I constantly see him commenting on these things, and I don't know.
Dan's our second highest all-time viewed podcast.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
Second to Brandon Turner.
Brandon Turner, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's just Dan listening to his own episode.
Just over and over again.
Yeah, just on loop.
No, but yeah, so I see him commenting on basically on national Facebook pages that you wouldn't necessarily think, and they're just like random stuff, right? It's like a pool maintenance Facebook group, and he's commenting all the time. Like he's very like he just shares his wealth of knowledge with a lot of people, and I feel like that's super important for a lot of people, just having that mindset that there's enough out there for everybody and just to help everyone along. So
I had him speak at a REIA a couple years ago, and we did a panel, and he was the only person that like literally prepared packets and like pages of notes. And I was really impressed because I knew Dan, but I didn't know him like deeply. But I was not anticipating him to be the guy that was like extremely prepared and researched. And I was like, and now knowing Dan, I'm like, well, of course that's Dan.
Yeah.
But I definitely got to give him Brett. I mean, I need to give him his own audience and come speak in front of the group because I was so impressed with how he came prepared.
Sure. But yeah, to go back to your point.
Austin's like, this is about me, not Dan.
That's all right. Now, I share the same mindset. As much information as you can get out to as many people is best. And that's why I find that just so funny that I see him all the time, because we both comment on these pages constantly trying to help different investors or just homeowners with pools or different laundromat guys. Even though I don't have a laundromat, I like to follow it.
What are these pages you're following on Facebook?
Well, so like Airbnb hosts of Airbnb Automated. I don't know. There's hundreds of them.
You have to send me the link so
I typically go in and I see how many people are in specific Facebook groups, and I'm looking for ones that have 8 to 10 posts a day at least. And those are kind of stuff that I have looked at for the last 4 years. I'm just an information junkie, though, right? My wife makes fun of me all the time because she's like, you'll find the littlest thing, and then you'll research it for like 6 hours. And that's just kind of the way I am. I always like to get the mass amount of information that I can.
So back to systems. What systems are you using right now?
So like I said, we actually do mostly everything just hands-on. Like we don't do a whole lot of.
You're not using a pricing tool?
I am not. I have.
Yeah. You're not using a PMS?
I'm not using a PMS. No, we do everything. My wife handles most of the back-end stuff. So we're both pretty big nerds, but she's like an organized nerd, and I'm just like forgetful and just an idea guy, right?
Now, did you listen to the podcast we did with Mark Simpson?
Yeah, I've read his book.
Okay, now any thoughts on self-booking? Are you guys going down that road?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of on our horizon. That's kind of the next is to start our own website. I have looked into Boostly. I think Mark is.
My site's not done yet, but when it's done, I'll share with you.
The amount of podcasts that I've listened to of Mark Simpson is probably one of the most listened to person that I've ever had. Because I think out of any system, if you can get a website and you can start direct bookings, then you can leave little cards. I leave I leave little welcome baskets for everybody.
What's in that? Welcome basket.
So the one that I like to do the most, it's just like a little snack pack, right? I leave 6 to 10 like bags of chips and some granola bars and some popcorn and waters. And then I have a handwritten thank you card that's in each one of those. Now those also never get taken, so then they just recycle. So I really don't have to handwrite that many of them, and there's places that you can pay. You can write one and then send it in, and they have the little AIs or whatever that write the cards for you. So, but this is what I like to put in each one of my welcome baskets. It's just like, thank you for booking our family home. I like to remind everybody that we're a small family business. That always goes over really well. And then when I ask for reviews, I do the same thing. I just tell them it really helps out our small family business if you can, leave us a 5-star review. I don't get like too into the weeds of it. I know a lot of hosts like to put those magnets up that are like, you have to leave us a 5-star or we suck. And that's fairly true, but they try to make it sound like they're killing you if they leave anything less than a 5-star.
That's a good tip. I'm gonna add the handwritten notes just like you suggested right there.
So I do that I think it's just a little something to kind of just help people know that you're a person, right? I kind of feel like when you're at a lot of these, when people are coming in and booking it, they don't really think of you like that. They just kind of think of you as somebody who's providing housing and, but we try to provide as much experiences as we can. We try to help people as much as we can. We leave pack and plays, cribs, high chairs. We provide a lot for our customers, and we try to provide as good of as experience as I can for all the guests that come and stay at our places.
Okay, so doing all these extra touches that you're doing and managing properties in such a large, area,
Sure.
6 hours.
Yeah.
And I mean, how are you and your wife kind of managing this with also, you have 3 kids, right?
Yep.
Taven, Paxton, and Landon, is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Like how are you managing the daily life with the children, handling, because Airbnbs are a lot more hands-on.
They are definitely a lot more hands-on.
And
sure.
And your wife, Deanne, she works full-time too, right?
Yeah, so she's an engineer. She works full-time. She works from home, which helps a ton.
Okay, it does.
And we have it kind of set up, and this is part of the reason, I owned a concrete construction company for 5 years before I kind of jumped into this full-time. And we had kind of been picking up a property a year, and it was getting to the point where self-managing all these properties and running the concrete business was just being too much. And so I like to kind of live more like we got into this. I'm not looking to get, super wealthy. I don't want to be a Grant Cardone or Donald Trump. I don't care about any of that. I just want to be able to spend time with my family whenever I want to. When friends are like, hey, do you want to go to Belize? I want to say, hell yeah. Hell yeah, I want to go to Belize. Let's go. Right? And so now, as far as from a time standpoint, it doesn't take as much time as you think, to manage these properties. Maintaining pools and hot tubs, that can take quite a bit more time. But once you kind of get the hang of it, it's all just kind of set in place. Mondays we're setting out the cleaners, and my wife and I, we talk a lot. Obviously, we spend a ton of time together. But she works from home, so she's super flexible. The company she's been with since out of college. She's only had one job her entire life, which for people like you and me, Ted, is like I can't even believe it. I've jumped similarly to you.
Ted's on his 3rd job in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I've had a different.
My last
job.
decade has been really good, just so you know.
Yeah, so my last decade's been pretty good too. Last 7 years. But before that, before I owned my concrete business, I did that for 5 years. I had never stayed at a place longer. It was like almost 2 years to the day, and I'm like, I've mastered this. I'm bored. I'm moving on. And so I've worked.
That's the way I was with women before I met my wife.
Oh, well, I had a 2.5-year relationship and a 5-year relationship before my wife too. So to a certain extent, but it was kind of that way. I mean, I GM'd a pizza restaurant. I was a manager for a furniture place. I was a sales guy.
I was a general manager at a pizza place too.
Yeah, Valentino's for me.
Oh, pizza and WC Frank's.
Yeah, and WC Frank's, 2 different ones. I worked as a lead teller. I've done just so many different things. And then I worked for Thrasher, in construction. And then I started my own concrete company. I just kind of always jumped back and forth. And that's one of the things I love about real estate too. It's like there's always something different and something new that you can do. So it's like
India freedom.
Yeah, that's the main thing for me. And now I put in just as many hours as what I did when I was working full time, but it's when I want to put them in, So I play softball 3 to 6 nights a week. My wife and I play volleyball 2 to 3 nights a week. She plays on her own a couple nights a week. My kids are all in traveling baseball. So I just kind of our calendar.
How many
is
nights
insane.
are in your week? Because this is like 10.
It's
what
insane.
It sounds like.
It's insane, but we live our life wild and crazy. Like we are always on the road from the start of April until basically mid-September. We are lucky if I am home 1 weekend a month, and it's typically about 2 or 3 for that entire span, and sometimes not even that. So because I travel for softball, I'm not allowed to play locally anymore. So I have to go to Minnesota or Kansas City or Des Moines.
Because you've been kicked out of every team, or
No,
You're a fighter.
well,
scrapper? Yeah.
it's level. It's so the higher level up you go, like Nebraska. I'm not going to get too far into this, but basically the highest level of softball there is in Nebraska is C. So, and I'm an A softball player, so I can't play at that level. I have to play higher levels. So my team, which is based out of Omaha, which we have an amazing sponsor who puts way too much money towards the softball team. He pays for everything, but we have to travel to play. So basically once every other week or once every 3 weeks, we're traveling to either Kansas City, Des Moines, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, Florida, Vegas, somewhere to play.
Sounds busy.
Sounds
It is.
Sounds expensive. That's what
Well,
it sounds like.
It's expensive for my sponsor.
You put some
Like,
miles on your car.
Yeah, I do put miles on my card, but our sponsor pays for our hotels, he pays for our flights if we have to, he pays for all the entry fees, our uniforms, if we need a new bat that year. Like,
Man, I need to dust off my spikes.
he's been doing it for almost 45 years. He's been sponsoring the softball team. It's like a huge pride point to him, and he's just an amazing person too. So,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Hey, you've been doing all these Airbnbs.
Yes.
Have you ever found anything that was left back in the Airbnb, or any crazy weird investment stories?
I haven't gotten too crazy as far as stuff left. I'd say my craziest story is spring break down at the Ozarks. We had this girl reach out to us, and she's like, "Hey, I know your minimum age is 25. We're just looking for a chill place," which is what they always say. And she's like, "that we can come to celebrate graduation." And,
right.
and like, you can't seriously tell how old
Are
they
you like keyword celebrate?
Yeah, that basically, and we've gotten a lot better as our processes to cutting out parties over the time. But so we ended up, it was spring break. We hadn't had many bookings in the winter, and this is in March. The Ozarks get busy in May. So we're like, we could really use this $1,800 from this booking. We're kidding. So we took it. And we had one of our neighbors call, really pissed off down there, and understandably, they're trespassing, they're cursing at our kids, and yada, yada, yada. So I sent out this message, to her, and I'm like, hey, if I get a call from the cops today, you guys are gone. And this was, I know it's your last night. I would have probably kicked you out for what I've gotten already, but which I've only done that once, kicked somebody out of a property in 4 years and probably, 600, 700 stays or whatever we've had. But I was like, you guys can't stay here if I get any call from the cops. And she's like, well, if you get a call, can you let us know so we can just leave? I'm like, no, I ain't doing that. I'm letting them come. But so anyways, then the next morning it rolls around. It's like 10 o'clock, 10:30. And checkout's at 11, and I'm like, God, they're still there. You can see on the cameras, they're not even packing stuff up. This is going to be a nightmare. And she sends me a message that's like, hey, I just want to let you know some kids that we were hanging out with earlier in the week found us through our Snapchat location services, and they came to the house and they were chasing us with tasers, and they put a bunch of holes in the wall of your house while you were going.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, did you make a police report? It's like we were really traumatized, and we were kind of feeling assaulted, and did you make a police report? Like, well, no, but looking back, we probably should have. I'm like, well, you're on the hook. There's really not much you can do. So, they ended up leaving, and I went through, and it wasn't an insane amount of damage, but it was really dirty.
You're like, I'm gonna make the 5-hour drive for this one.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, definitely not. No, our cleaners went. They let us know what the damage was. I got a hold of our handyman. We got a quote. I charged him back for it. I think it was $900 to patch the drywall and repaint it. And we had just painted, so we had the paint to match. So it wasn't really that big a deal. But Yeah, and they like paid that $900 instantly, which I was like really surprised about for high school graduation students. But I would say, the herd mentality kind of takes over, and that's just kind of what happens.
They were chasing us around with tasers.
They were chasing us around with tasers.
What?
And I was like, okay, and then they told us what time it was. So I'm like trying to look back, and see
cameras
on the exterior cameras and see like what's going on. And I'm like, we have access. So if the police need any information, let us know. And then once they left me 5-star review, that's when I charged them. And then that's when I left their 1-star review. So, and then they paid it right away. So I even got a 5-star review out of it, which was nice. Because they're like, he was so awesome and so accommodating. I'm like, yeah, because you thought you were getting away with it.
So how do you handle parties in general?
Yeah, so I typically, like when a booking comes in, I'm looking at how many people are on it, how many adults are on it, and what they say. A lot of times they're like, well, we're booking it for our child's 5th birthday party or whatever. And I don't allow parties of any sort. Like I feel like kind of a Grinch when I do that, like for birthday parties or like for little kids' birthday parties, or graduation parties is a common thing, especially the places that we get these requests a lot. And I just tell people like, look, we do allow you to have guests, but you can never at any point go over our maximum occupancy, which is anywhere from 10 to 17. And they usually like, oh, well, we're only going to have like 20 people. I'm like, this isn't the right place. You can cancel or refund all your money. But I've gotten pretty good at sniffing that stuff out. So when I see an inquiry come in, if I see like 10 adults, we put no bachelor parties, no bachelorette parties. And I think for whatever reason, it has transitioned to anytime there's a bachelorette party and they don't want to say bachelorette party, they always say cousin's trip. I've gotten that like 8 times.
Cousin's trip?
Oh yeah, we have 10 girls coming. It's a cousin's trip, and I'm like, oh come on, this is a bachelorette party for sure. And so and then I reiterate our house rules on the booking message, and I put our quiet hours on there because I try to be I try to limit as many parties as possible. I don't get very many. I've been pretty fortunate overall. So yeah, knock on wood for sure. So I try to limit that as much as possible. And really it's more, I just say we try to, represent our neighborhood well, and we try to be kind to our neighbors, and I kind of put it on them a little bit too. But that's really how I feel. It's like, I know it could suck living next to an Airbnb if there's just constant parties going on. So I try to limit that as much as possible. And we do well enough without having that atmosphere that I just try to avoid it at any cost.
Well, I suppose you could use the neighborhood as the bad guy or the HOA.
Sure.
And be like, hey, HOA doesn't allow this.
Yeah.
If you violate this, you're out.
Yeah.
Like, sorry.
Yep.
Like bad cop them.
Yeah, and I always and anytime I have to send a message, which isn't very often, but whenever I do get a complaint from a neighbor, which I always go introduce myself to neighbors, I give them my phone number. I'd rather have a face to it. I'd rather be able to talk to them instead of them all just talking behind the back and calling the cops, right? So I always go and I give them my information. They give me a call, and then I send out a message to the group that's staying, and I just always say, hey, I really hate to send these messages out, but we did have a complaint from a neighbor, and we need you to move inside. And that's it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. We have big fire pits at our places. People like to hang out late and have a couple drinks. Sure. I get it, but at the same time, I need to be respectful of the neighbors in the neighborhood. So,
God, these are great tips.
That I think if you just kind of expand on a little bit more, if you can just be a little bit more preemptive about the parties and just having that conversation up front, then it really helps damage a lot of or contain the damage on the backlash. So,
well, this is great stuff for anybody operating Airbnbs. I mean, make sure and bookmark some of the sound bites that Austin's provided here today, because there's some gold in here. And
I've gotten so much out of this.
Speaking of gold, we have a section that we lovingly call
Failing Forward. And this Failing Forward is brought to you by REsimply.com. If you're in the real estate game like I am, you know just how wild it can get managing everything from lead tracking to marketing, sales, and operations. That's exactly where REsimply, an all-in-one software for real estate investors, comes in. It's a lifesaver for thousands of investors out there. What's incredible about REsimply is that it is packed with everything you need. List stacking, driving for dollars, automated drip campaigns, a cold call calling dialer, complete phone system, email management, speed to lead, buyer management, a comprehensive task system, accounting features, and much more. It's like a powerhouse software crafted just for us in the real estate world, eliminating the need for juggling multiple subscriptions and integrations. So check out RE Simply if you want to streamline your investing business and start closing more deals. Sign up through resimply.com/Hartman. That's resimply.com/HARTMAN. And you'll snag 50% off of your first month. Plus, they're going to throw in a 14-day trial, so don't miss out and give it a look.
Do you have anything that's not gone according to plan that you maybe learned some lessons along the way about and can share with the audience here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a couple of them. And I also flip about a house a year, basically for some extra income. But I'd say my first specific one is really the first house I bought, and we talked a little bit about it. I had a duplex, lived in one side, rented out the others, and I was just so worried about being the nice guy to people, and I didn't hire out a management system or management person in general to be the bad guy, that I just kind of suffered through that property for 6 years. And a lot of it is...
That's a learning lesson right there.
Yeah, it really is. And, I had this property for so long, but it really helped determine that this was not something that I wanted to do. I don't like dealing with that. I would get back into long-term rentals. In fact, my plan is to diversify my portfolio and get some long-term rentals, but I'm going to hire out the management. It doesn't cost that much, really, when you consider it. And... then they can be the bad guy, and I can just be the landlord, and I can focus on the Airbnb, which is something that I personally like to do a lot more. And then when it comes to flipping houses, I kind of like I said earlier, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I like things done a certain way, and so I do a lot of the work myself. And so it's kind of the both of those combined is kind of come to the realization that it's okay to let stuff go. It's okay to let other people handle it and focus on what you're good at, and let people handle what you're not. And so I've started to hire out significantly more things than I've done in the past.
I discovered that when it comes to long-term management, that the houses I am way too controlling over, and that I just need to get in a small apartment building, 20 units or less, and then I can just control the outside and be, and then I feel like it'd be a little easier on me.
Owen's looking at you like you have no idea.
Am I wrong?
No, you should do that.
Yeah.
I feel. Look, I think a lot of people that get into real estate investing in general are control freaks, right? You have ambitious people, and for whatever reason, ambition and drive coincide with type A personalities a lot of times. I mean, that's no shade against, engineers and people that are more introverted, because there's certainly those that are successful in this business too. But, I would consider myself a hunter, and I don't really care after I get whatever.
Sure.
I'm a hunter and killer, and after I kill it, I don't want to do anything else with it. Like somebody else clean up my mess type thing. So maintenance is not my bag. I don't like it. I don't like dealing with it. I have a problem trusting people until they prove it.
Sure.
And it's hard to get past that, right? So if you walked in the door and you're like, oh, here's everything about me, and I could instantly trust you, then I'd be like, yes, do my stuff that I don't want to do.
Yep.
But until I get that level of trust with somebody, it's hard to pull that trigger. And so I get it. I make fun of you, you make fun of me about various things about this, Ted, but it's a real thing. I mean, you got to have trust with people, and trust is earned.
Yeah.
But it's hard to earn trust from people that haven't done any work for you. It's a dichotomy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I think, people that are experienced in the business and are hiring people for a specific task, you got to do reference checks and so on, and get referrals from other investors that like, and trust.
Yeah.
To feel comfortable turning stuff over to them that are tasks that you don't like.
Yeah, that's been something I've jumped on a lot in the last 2 years, is just using the local network and talking to people and getting references from people that I admire or that I know, or that are in a similar situation. I'm like, well, if they did good work for you, then I feel pretty confident they'll do good work for me. So I stick away from homeowners, for the most part, as far as, this guy did great work for me.
Contracting jobs, you mean?
Yeah, contracting jobs. So I
hate it too. I don't like that.
Yeah. So I typically look at investors that I, kind of like you said, that I respect or that I know and that I like and that have the similar type of mindset that I do. And if they recommend a contractor, I'm going to go with that. And as long as the price is fair, I'm going to go with them. Like, it doesn't have to be the cheapest. I don't necessarily always believe in getting 3 bids. But if I have a good referral from somebody that I know and respect and trust, then, and the price is fair, like, I'm not going to pay a ton, but if it's a fair price, I'm just going to go with them.
Yeah.
I'm quickly discovering that the cheapest price will cost you more money in the end.
Sure, sometimes.
Because
it can go both ways.
I've had contractors in the past where it's like they were by far the best price. But in the end, the project went from, 2 months to a year or, whatever. And then you have the holding costs, and then you miss out on the better interest rates, or you missed out on the potential tenants.
Sure.
And if you look at that, you can look at it in the short term and you go like, oh man, in the short term my holding cost was an extra $30,000, but in the long term I lost out on that 3% interest rate, and now I have 7%, or I lost out in tenants in this place, or I lost out on my Airbnb. In the end, that could have cost you $1 million over 10 years. You don't know,
especially in the Airbnb world. Like, so right now I have a 6-figure renovation going on a property that I'm doing. I mean, it's a massive one, and I've hired
right up Ted's alley.
Yeah, and I've hired out. I mean, we pulled down drywall, and we found like the biggest rats I've ever seen in Omaha. Skeletons. I pulled out a entire huge raccoon skeleton out of the ceiling of this place. I've never seen that before.
Is this the place that in Omaha
that your mom helped me buy? Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just this massive raccoon
I would
skeleton.
never guess it with that place either.
No, I mean, it's in a really nice area. Like, it's a big place, but it just, they didn't do any maintenance for probably like the last 20 or 30 years.
It's a cool house.
Well, getting back to the point though, a lot of times it's if there's high cost and high quality should coincide.
Right.
Low cost but high maintenance is the trade-off a lot of times.
Sure.
So if you get the cheapest bid and you go with them, a lot of times there's this drama. Like, are they going to show up today? Is somebody going to randomly steal their tools? Are they dealing meth? Well,
and to your point too, like, it's a big remodel, but I'm in a time crunch, right? Because I have now, I mean, we're at May 21st or 22nd? I don't know.
24th.
24th, close enough. So I have basically 2 weeks to get this thing done to open up for the College World Series. If I don't get open up for the College World Series, that costs me probably $25,000 or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so it's kind of one of those things where you're paying for convenience, you're paying for time, you have your holding costs, but you also have your lost opportunity costs, especially from an Airbnb if it's coming up on a specific high.
And you want reviews and everything on that property.
Yeah, I mean, the reviews are kind of like, you'll get the reviews no matter what time it's finished, but June in Omaha is the biggest month for Airbnbs. So if I can't get it done in time for this, which I'm starting to think is not going to happen, but if it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. But, that's obviously a huge lost opportunity cost.
Yeah. So. Well, this has been awesome content for short-term rentals and like how you approach it, manage them, and look at acquiring them, the amenities. There's so many good tips out of this.
Probably one of the most in-depth conversations we've had in this.
Yeah, I think so. But we have one last section we like to cover that's called the OT with Owen and Ted, where we cover the same 5 questions, sometimes 6, with every guest. And we've got these bad boys locked and loaded for you. Are you ready to roll on them? All right, Austin. First question for you: what would you title your first book, and what topic would it cover?
I would probably do something along the lines of like investing while living. Like I said, I have a little bit different mindset than a lot of investors. I'm not here to get completely rich. I want my time freedom, which is what a lot of investors want. But I don't want it in the future. I want it now. So, like I said, we live a pretty crazy life. Like, we're just on the go all the time. And we try to get as many trips in, as many vacations in as we can. So if I was going to write a book, it would probably be something about just creating a process that you can do from anywhere, and you can say yes as many times as possible when people ask you to do things, or when my kids want me to do things. They want to go on a vacation. Like, we took them to Costa Rica last year, and that was something one of my kids wanted to do for sure. The other one complained the entire time we were there, and I was like, "You're about the only kid."
Isn't that how it goes?
Oh God, it just drove me crazy. I never left the country until I was in my 30s, right? And here he was getting to go to Costa Rica, and he's like, "Oh, we can just go home like every day. Like, let's just go home. We don't need to be here."
That's so like
I have one
deflating.
daughter like that too.
It is.
It's like I'm doing all this for you.
We're going
I
on
know.
we're going on vacation again.
And we're going to Costa Rica in December when it's late December when it's 0 degrees back home and snowing. Oh, but I'd be in my living room with my computer.
My son is such a homebody. Okay, so we are on the Austin Chambers live podcast. You can interview anybody in the world today. Who is it going to be, and what's the one dying question you want to ask them?
That's a great question, and this is one of the ones when I was looking back through that I didn't really think of all that much. I actually, the bigger podcast has that Rob Babasolo. Mm-hmm. That's one of the co-hosts, and he's really big into the Airbnbs. And so, and he kind of seems like he's got a similar mindset from a hospitality industry that I do. And, obviously he's one of the bigger names in the STR business, but I'd probably like to talk to him and just see like how he combats providing the hospitality side while automating some of it. Because that's kind of what I feel like is lost a lot in the Airbnb is, everybody tries to automate. But the more you automate, the less human you are, right? And the less of that kind of personal perspective that people get. And that's something that I always really enjoy with the Airbnbs and, providing that kind of more personal touch. And it's something that as you grow, it gets harder and harder to do. The more properties you get, the harder it is to be hands-on. So that's probably be what I would ask him is like, how do you maintain that same hospitality? How do you maintain that same personal connection with your guests while still growing? Yeah.
Well, I think we can get Rob on. We're about to reach out to him, get him on. I think he'd be a good person to interview.
Yeah, good point. No, that's a really good point though about the hospitality versus automation, because you kind of have to love that part of the business to do a great job at it. And I wrestle with that too because I wouldn't say I interact with guests like personally a ton, but there are issues that come up where you have to pay attention to, right? And I always feel good when I solve a problem for someone. Yep. Always. Like you know what I mean? Yep. You feel proud and good that you solved, you made somebody's day better. And so you get that with, the more personalized touch, but the trade-off is like automation. My last guest that stayed, I never interact with them at all.
Sure.
Just because I have automated messages and whatever.
Yeah. Now I have 4 automated messages that I send to all my guests, I'm not going to sit here and say I don't do any automation because I do. And I've gone through the pricing software. I've gone through the PMS systems. I don't know if it was just too complicated, too much work to get to know them and do them right.
Yeah.
But I struggled with them, and I tried each of them for like 2 months. And I would go back to the pricing software. That's something as I grow, I think that is super important because they do really help maintain a correct pricing. Like just a real quick story I was following on a Facebook page is somebody was like, hey, how come my place rented for $1,400 this week? My normal cost is $200. Well, they were hooked up to an automation system and they got that $1,400 because it was the eclipse week in a town that was in the path.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they call it. Path of, I don't know, whatever.
Totality.
Thank you. Path of totality.
Yeah.
Look at you go, Ted. Science guy.
I win today.
I'm going to call you Bill Nye from now on.
Well, I got the same story. I priced all my stuff out, and I priced it during the CWS at $675. And when Price Labs, every night they update, and then they updated my pricing when they connected, and they updated it to 770, and all of a sudden it rented at 770 the next day.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have gotten that 770 a night during the CWS if it wasn't for the Price Labs connect.
Yeah,
so it paid for itself.
And I go through once a week and I update my prices, so I'm not doing it pretty much every day. I'm going through, and if we're getting close and I'm not booked, which doesn't happen a lot, I'm usually booked out a month and a half, 2 months, sometimes even longer at our places.
The more I listen to people that have Airbnb like properties that they're hosting, the more I realize like I'm not good at this at all. Like I don't do any of what you're talking about. Like if okay, here's a question for both of you. If you could pick one and only one tool to use for Airbnb management, what would it be?
Price Labs.
Ted?
Or Wheelhouse, or a dynamic pricing software.
Yeah.
Wheelhouse is similar, so
Yeah.
that's a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know this.
Yeah, I'd probably go Price Labs as of this moment, because I don't know everything that OwnerRez does yet. So right now, it's Price Labs.
Well, especially like the PMS system, it comes into play when you start having more and more properties. And if you want to grow, it's probably good to get
So it's like AppFolio. If you have long-term rentals, like
Sure.
there's no point in if you have 4 or 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, rentals.
Yeah,
like why buy AppFolio? It's
and
just do it on a spreadsheet.
And even if you have like Airbnb and VRBO, you can sync those calendars,
Yeah.
so it does it automatically. You don't need to have a PMS system. The PMS system is a little bit faster, but it's like an hour compared to 15 minutes.
But the reason I have a PMS system is because I'm doing the Boostly site,
Boostly. So
and
you're
it
connecting
requires a PMS software to connect
Sure.
to it.
Okay, and to wrap this up, so Price Labs, what does it cost?
$20 a month.
per property. Like
Per property,
it
okay.
has it's a sliding scale. So
Yeah.
the more properties you have, the less it is per.
And you guys both feel it's totally worth it?
Yeah, I don't use it currently, but it's something that I will be shortly. I'll be jumping back on board.
It's paid for itself already for me.
And is it like ease of setup? Is it?
It connects right into your Airbnb account.
Yeah,
so
there's
it's
a
like
little
you
bit
click
of,
a couple buttons. And
it's a little more than that. Like you have to set your minimum pricing, what your minimum and what your maximum
Okay.
is, and it kind of, so there is a little bit of a learning curve with them.
30 minutes to an hour, you can be set up though.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's some adjusting as you go.
All right,
So
that's a good tip. So
Sure.
I actually I'm gonna pat myself on the back. That was a good question.
that was great.
I think I'm gonna use that because I don't do constant updating of pricing
Sure.
and any of that stuff.
Yeah, and the
should
nice thing
use
about that
this.
is, like, if you're using that, it knows everything. It knows concerts. It knows all the events that are going on. It's looking at all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not just, I want to be kind of the median price for everything that's in my neighborhood. It is the constant updates. And if you don't know all of those events and when they're coming, Berkshire Hathaway is another big one.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have those, like, dialed in and get your prices in early, then if you're doing it all yourself, then you can really lose out on a lot of money.
Hey, one sidebar I wanted to throw at you here. Being a softball junkie that you are, you mentioned Slump Busters. So that's a tournament in Omaha
Yes.
Annually.
Yes,
that
every
has
year.
thousands of people that come in
Yeah,
for
it's-
basically softball, like a huge tournament. right?
Baseball.
Baseball.
Youth baseball.
Youth baseball. Okay,
Yeah, so
sorry.
that's when my sons are in it. It is 2 weekends. So it's back-to-back weekends, which are the weekends of the College World Series. So they coincide it with it so that kids can have a College World Series experience as
yeah.
well. But, yeah, I mean, it is a monster. And the last 2 years, that's all we've had stay paying ridiculous amount.
I just got like a $3,500 booking on it.
All right, hold on. Don't go off the rails here. Here's my question.
Okay.
Do you know where that term came from?
Yes, I know what a slump buster is. I grew up around
Do
baseball
you know
my
who?
entire life.
Do you know who said it?
I don't know that. Who said
It was
first?
Mark Grace with the
Okay.
Chicago Cubs. And for those of you that aren't familiar with this baseball, softball terminology, a slump buster is. I might get in trouble for that.
Yeah, maybe a
I'm
little
not
bit.
fat.
I'll let you
hey,
say it,
I'm
not
not
me.
fat shaming here, but as he said it,
No,
not me.
don't even go there.
He said a slump buster is to get out of basically your rut of getting some action, and it's picking out a person that
Large
is
person.
Yeah, a large person.
Yep.
So that's a slump buster. So
Yeah,
get
so
out of a slump. You
Mark Grace had
utilize that.
gone 0 for 20 in his last
Yes.
5 games. He'd go pick out a large person out of the crowd and try and take him home and
There-
sleep with him.
there you
and
go.
then break his slump.
Hey, It's not our words, it's his.
You
Ted.
can't have that in the podcast.
Oh,
Well,
please.
radio edit.
You've pushed the envelope on this multiple times.
Can I go in and say these are not my personal views?
Okay.
But
Okay.
this is what the term is.
Eulogy.
All right. Okay, so we're at your eulogy.
We're at your eulogy.
What?
We're at your funeral.
Yes, that's what I meant. We're at your funeral. Somebody's giving your eulogy. Who is it? What are they saying about you?
I mean, obviously, this will depend on how quickly it is. With my lifestyle, it could be anytime soon, or it could be 50 years from now. But I would probably, if I had to choose,
Let's just assume it's a long, well-lived life.
Okay. At this point, it would be my best friend. His name's Jeff. He's been my best friend most of my life. He knows stories about me that a lot of people don't. And
Do you want those stories told at your eulogy?
yes, hell yeah. I mean, really, like, and I've heard a lot of people say this, like, I want it to be a celebration. I want people to laugh. I don't want it to be freaking dreadful and boring. And, like, I want people to tell stories about how, I made them laugh or I inspired them in one way or another. And he's always been somebody that's kind of been in my corner. Like, we don't have anything in common, which is really weird for, like, a best friend. Like, we have 0 things in common. He's very technologically savvy, kind of more like he's a singer in a band, and I am, sports guy, going and playing, all those things, and real estate investor. And so we have nothing in common, but it actually really helps with our conversations because we're able to, like, not from a competitive standpoint, we're able to help each other and, like, listen and ask intuitive questions that we don't really understand, that maybe just somebody who's not part of the world doesn't understand, and it helps you focus on things better. But he's also super funny and super outgoing, and I think he sang our first dance song at my wedding, and so I think he would kill it. I think he'd be funny, and I think he'd make people laugh, and he would tell some stories that I wouldn't want told while I'm alive, but while I'm dead, it's perfectly fine.
Oh, that's cool, man.
What mentor in your life has had the biggest impact on you, and how they influenced your personal life or career?
So I've kind of taken a little bit different route. I've never really had a mentor from a real estate standpoint. I see a ton of value in having one. I've had a lot of friends that I can bounce ideas off of that are in a similar spot. But just from a mentality standpoint, I'm just going to say my parents. Like, I've been super fortunate to have the parents that I've had. They've helped me in times. They've invested in my companies. They've been super supportive, and they've had some tough conversations with me when I needed to have some tough conversations. My dad is just like the greatest person ever, just super nice. A yes man, says yes to everybody when things are asked of him. So I kind of took that from him. My mom is a very savvy business person. They're both fairly successful, but they're also both like hippies and just like lovey-dovey, and just, that's just kind of the way they are. And so I've taken a lot of their personality traits and kind of meshed them, and I think that's really helped me focus in on what I'm good at and what I appreciate about them, and help from a personal standpoint too. And then, not to be super cliche, but my wife is like the most amazing woman in the world. So
She's pretty awesome.
Oh my God, I don't know what the hell she was thinking. But she stuck with me, and I mean, not only does she work a full-time job, she's super successful in her own right as an engineer. But she really helps out on our business, and she's just the most amazing mother and person, and is just, really always, there to help people and really just be able to bounce ideas off of. And she's super smart. So, as much as it's kind of cliche to say my parents and my wife, that is truly how I feel and how I've been. So
Good stuff, man. So how can our listeners support you, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
So, I mean, I'm very active on Facebook. I don't do a ton on LinkedIn or Instagram or X, formerly known as Twitter, but I do a little
Mostly,
bit here and there.
christianmingle.com.
Yes.
Or farmer. What's that farmer?
Oh, yeah, the farmer's wife or whatever it was. No, but I'm very active on Facebook. It's just Austin Chambers. I have my profile pictures me with my son I'm just carrying my 4-year-old son on my shoulders, and so that's probably the most active way. Or call me on my phone or text me. Text me is really a lot better. I don't answer random numbers because I get 7,000 calls a day from spam numbers. But
you might not want to drop your phone number then in here.
Yeah, whatever. It's 402-730-8372.
Oh.
I'm going there.
We haven't had one of those in a minute.
But as far as helping the business, really, I'm always looking for cool properties. And it doesn't have to be something that's got all the amenities already.
Has to have a pool?
It doesn't have to. No, I do like them. But, a hot tub's not very expensive to put in, comparatively speaking. And that is probably the biggest driver of Airbnbs, even more than pools, because it's year-round, right? So
It's way better than insurance.
yes, way better on insurance, for sure. But, yeah, I just like really cool, unique properties. I want something that's got a funky layout that, maybe it doesn't work so well for just, an everyday family. The one I'm working on right now has got all the bedrooms on one side and this cool area on another side with a spiral staircase that goes up to a loft.
You should definitely do a showcase of that property
Once it's done. Yeah, I will. Yeah. We'll get it. Maybe we can do a little what do we do? The party bus tour.
Or
go to it.
Or rookie REIA.
REIA. Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be
for
a good
sure.
one.
Yeah, I'm in.
Well, Austin, thanks for coming out. I know we've been trying to do this for a while.
Sure.
I've known you for a lot of years. We used to work together. It's kind of funny that we had this full circle, but now we're back into doing investing and
Yeah, it's something different than what we were doing when we first met.
Exactly. And I love the properties you're doing, but I think that the people listening to this podcast are going to get a lot from it, just from the people that maybe are on the fence of doing short-term, mid-term investments. And I think there's a lot of insight here. I personally learned a lot. If you listen to this the first time or the 124th time, please leave us a review on whatever format you're listening to. I was actually going through all the reviews just a minute ago, and we have not had a written review since February. So I've
What?
Yeah. So, and if you are listening to this on Amazon podcast, you definitely need to leave us a review because we haven't had a written review for a year.
Man.
On there.
You guys are lame. Come on. Step up your game here.
Yeah. So,
But I don't really mean that. I'm nice here. So, you love us. 5-star reviews only.
and share us with your friends and family and tell them to listen to us. We really appreciate it. It means a lot to us. And with that, Owen Dashner, we see us out.
On behalf of Austin Chambers, Ted Kosh, REIA Radio, and Devin Holcomb, I'm Owen Dashner, and you've been listening to Austin, I Really Outkicked My Coverage, Chambers. Signing off.
The radio edit this.
You can say it.
Radio edit. Radio edit.
Radio edit.
Radio edit.
Multiple radio edits.
But if you're listening for the first time or the 124th time, please leave us a review on whatever format you listen to this. Is really. Why am I so on this?
You're drunk?
I'm not drunk. Radio edit.
Ted, you slur pretty quickly after 2 of these.
Okay.